Welcome to this webinar. This is a conversation about what I'm describing as mining marketing gold. We're going to talk about metrics, analysis, insights, and evaluation in this session. And this is a topic that kind of is really, really close to my heart because so many people get this wrong, in my opinion. These terms are not terms that we can use interchangeably. For most of us, we kind of get a little bit muddled when we talk about analysis and evaluation and insights and metrics and data, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm going to do as we go through this session, hopefully, is provide a little bit of clarity over the differences, the pros, the cons, the challenges, the opportunities, and hopefully some of the value that you're going to get in the concept of using data to inform effective marketing going forward. So that's really what we're talking about here when we talk about mining marketing gold. So what we're going to cover is really the importance overall of metrics and analysis. In other words, finding the numbers, finding the data, finding the information, and then transforming that data into insights. Because if you start reporting data and numbers and information to the rest of your organization, you may well see some very glazed looks on people's faces. You might sort of be misleading them because they translate what you're saying into perceptions that they have over what you're saying, which actually isn't particularly accurate. So what we're going to try and do here is transform that data into sound and evidence-based insights. In other words, giving the opportunity for you to share something that is really powerful, that's insight but evidence-driven, so the organization can then make better decisions, can forecast, can predict more accurately, and can really move the game forward more broadly. So this includes everyone. So the whole idea of insights being communicated across the organization is a very inclusive thing. And I'm going to talk about that as we go through this. And then also the big word here, which for me is, again, an often either overlooked word or misinterpreted, is the word evaluation. So evaluating the impact of doing this stuff. So the impact of gathering the metrics and analysis, doing something with that data, turning it into useful intelligence for the organization, and then evaluating the difference that that makes. So we've got four kind of levels, if you like, that are really important to consider. And of course, even just starting to talk in this way, unless you have a very, very clear definition of what we're talking about, it's often then very, very easy, particularly if you're kind of new to this stuff. It's very, very easy to get a little bit kind of swamped by these terms or going down a sort of a dead end alley that just doesn't really lead to where you need to be. So let's begin with some really, hopefully, very, very clear definitions. So first one is metrics. What do we mean by metrics? So metrics are the raw numbers. They are the indicators that you set for how well you are doing. So you can watch how things are progressing on a campaign or a project or a particular task. So these are very much the data. So when people talk about, metrics, they are talking about, collecting, not yet analyzing, but just collecting relevant numbers, relevant indicators, and relevant data. The analysis bit is then what you think and feel about those metrics. So what do you think when you see that indicator move from there to there? What do you feel about the data as you see it, as it comes into your system or the way that you're collecting it? What do you kind of, what's your initial impression or sort of instinctive reaction to the raw numbers that you're seeing? This is the analysis bit where you look at the data, you look at the indicators, you look at those raw numbers, and you start to kind of get a sense of how they're going. The kind of the trend that you might sort of be able to spot if you compare them to something that you've looked at or done before. So it's the kind of what you think and feel about those metrics. That's analysis. But of course, that is just analysis in lots of ways. So what you need to do then is to actually draw some conclusions and hopefully make some recommendations that you decide from the analysis that you do of those metrics. So you take the numbers, you think and feel around those numbers, and then you start to draw some recommendations, things that you would want to do differently next time, things that you've learned from seeing and watching a particular thing trending in a particular direction, could be up, could be down, or you might see it flatline, and that in itself tells you something. So it's about drawing some conclusions, some real kind of insights, if you like, from the analysis, those thoughts and feelings about the metrics. So can you see what we're doing here? We're turning the raw data or the raw information into something that is a lot more meaningful because it comes with some sort of, real kind of heavyweight thought behind it, and some kind of interpretation really is what you're doing here at the insight level. So you're making some solid judgments, if you like, but you're not evaluating yet because that comes next. An evaluation, the way I would define it, would be the assessment of the impact and decisions taken from those insights. So let's just think about a simple example. You see a particular number on the graph, whatever it is you're looking at or monitoring. You then feel, oh, hold on a minute, that's telling me something. I don't quite know what yet, but that's telling me something. That's the analysis bit. You then start to draw some conclusions, and you look deeper and you look for interrelationships between that number or that graph and something else that you're looking at. So you start to draw a conclusion, and then you tell others in the business about it. They then take that on, and this is the evaluation bit, they then take that on and do something with it, or maybe you do something with it. And then you assess the impact that that change, or that difference, or that thing has on where you then are in the future. So the evaluation is looking at the impact that your recommendations or conclusions from the analysis had based on those raw numbers. So what you're doing is you're kind of really sort of coming full circle all the way around. You gather the data, you feel about it, you think about it, you then draw some conclusions, you put something into practice, and then you're back around again looking at the numbers to see then what happened. And then you're going through the same process. So really what I could have done here was to put this really in a circular format, that you begin with the numbers, you analyze, you get insights, you evaluate, and then repeat and repeat and repeat. So the essence of this, and this is why I sort of said, this is real gold, it really is. This is about mining gold, because one, it's evidence-based, but two, it is a process of continuous improvement. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But I hope by this point, you can see that these terms are not interchangeable. They're describing very different points in the journey of using data to inform great improvements within your organization and in your projects and in your marketing. That's what this is all about. So you can't say, oh, I'm going to evaluate that. No, that's analyzing it. And you can't say, oh, here are my insights, when actually it was the data that you put in a graph and sent to your line manager, and they didn't understand it because it was just numbers. So, it's those kinds of things. We need to get really, really clear about what we mean by these terms. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail. Let's look at a slightly more bit of a deeper dive into these. So we're going to define what metrics are, and we're going to look at how important metrics are, because I've kind of pitched already the whole idea of insights and evaluation being kind of the top of the tree. This is kind of the cream on the milk, as it were, and this is where we're trying to head to. But it is important. The data is absolutely vital, because without that evidence, we're on very shaky ground. So we need to really define what metrics are, and then look at the importance of those within the sort of broader marketing strategy that we have. So what are metrics? Well, these are the numbers. They could be research findings. They are almost certainly your key performance indicators. So those things that just give you a sense of where you are today and how you're performing. They could be things like clicks. I mean, a lot of us obviously are using metrics and gathering data from digital sources, our websites and our social media activities and our campaigns and our emails. So it could be things like likes and follows, but it can also be stuff a little bit further down down the customer journey in things like leads and inquiries. How did some of those metrics, how do they lead on then to actually, generating the start of some business? So it's not about what did we do and how did we do it? It's much more about where's the raw baseline of data, the metrics that we can capture that gives us a sense of knowing of what is going on. So we're not doing anything with it yet. We're just kind of capturing the right stuff so that we know what is going on and we know it's the right kind of approach, if you like, to be beginning with. And that's really where we are. So I've got a quote for you here from Harvard Business Review, because for me, this is the really kind of important bit to remember, is that this capturing of metrics and data and numbers can have quite a profound effect on how your business then, or your organization then, acts into the future. And what the Harvard Business Review have said is they've said that brand building has long suffered from having measures such as awareness and advocacy that have no credible predictive linkage or retrospective connection to financial performance. In other words, we're looking at stuff, we're capturing data that really doesn't actually show how we're making progress, and it really doesn't sort of give us an idea of where we're going to go in the future. And for this reason, the accountability as a business contributor, especially in the short term, is often considered to be weak and undermining its perceived value. So what HBR is saying is basically, if all you are doing is capturing numbers and reporting those numbers, it's going to have little impact really on the business and the organization. And I've already kind of mentioned this really at a high level by saying that, people don't really understand numbers. If you are using numbers and data and research day in, day out, then you'll get it, you'll understand it. But you try convincing somebody who isn't in your department, doesn't do what you do, doesn't really understand the acronyms and the terms that you're using from a marketing perspective. And it's very hard then to give value. So if we are reporting data and reporting metrics in our reporting, our monthly scorecards or our monthly reports, then we are doing this wrong because the audience really are not getting it. And that's really what HBR are saying. So it can undermine the building of brand in the longer term because we're just measuring the wrong stuff, or we're reporting those measures. We're not actually drawing the insights. So top tip number one of this particular session then is to say, from metrics, is establish your key performance indicators, the information you're willing and should be obsessing about. Because it's like your ultimate dashboard, your window into the state of your marketing performance in the present moment. So this is the first point. If you are going to be capturing the right data that's going to allow you to analyze, draw some insights, and then evaluate the right kind of things, you need to be thinking about the metrics, the data that you're looking at, and establish some key performance indicators, those that are going to really give you a sense of how am I doing in any moment of any day? How am I doing? How is my marketing going? How is the campaign performing? So these are key performance indicators, because there's a billion things you could be watching and monitoring, but what are your key performance indicators? What are those things that, above all else, you really have to be watching and have to know? So that will be my top tip, is figure that out. And you can reverse engineer this back from, okay, if in the perfect report to my boss or to the board or to whoever else it is in the organization, what would be my perfect kind of set of recommendations? Because your key performance indicators need to be feeding those. So if you're sat there thinking, well, I don't know, Neil, what my key performance indicators would be, how do I begin? Well, begin by the end point. What is it you would want to be reporting? Because if you know that, your key performance indicators are the indicators, and that's why they're key, that will drive you into producing and finding the evidence that's going to support your reports and your analysis and your evaluation a little bit later. So that would certainly be my top tip. So what are examples then of metrics? So the kind of data that you could be thinking of in your key performance indicators or in your kind of gathering of data. Well, for a lot of us, these would be the key sort of big four, but you'll have some very specific ones that apply to you. So cost of customer acquisition. In other words, how much is it costing to get a customer? Your customer's lifetime value, the CLV, return on ad spend, for example, if you are running campaigns or you're doing some paid advertising, and things like social media engagement. So not just follows and likes, but the actual engagement, and finding some kind of metric that you can then be monitoring in terms of quality and quantity of engagement within socials. So those would be the kind of things at a very base level that you might be looking to do. So it's number driven, it's research driven, and you'll obviously have some examples that will then be relevant and key performance indicators for yourself. And what are you going to do with that then? So this is the what and why then of analysis. So you've got this feed of performance indicators, you've got this data and these metrics coming into your organization. So what are you going to do? How are you going to then start to interpret or analyze these things? So the first point is obviously what we're going to do is we're going to do some kind of definition. So what is analysis? So we've got our pot of data. How are we now going to be thinking and feeling about this? Well, the definition of analysis can be monitoring, recording, and measuring the progress of marketing activities over time. So it is about the interpretation, starting to kind of get a sense of monitoring this stuff, because of course your metrics are just the feed. You're now the human in this mix. So you're now monitoring and you're watching and you're sensing and you're recording and you're looking for, I would suggest, probably trends over a period of time, because a snapshot, as we know, a snapshot of data or some metrics is not really going to tell you a huge amount of stuff. It's not really going to tell you a huge amount of sort of value over what you could be then interpreting. So we're looking for probably, again, things like here, the interpretation of the customer lifetime value. So what every new customer is worth over the lifetime of the relationship with your business. It could be you want to do some interpretation of the cost of customer acquisition, as we've said before. What does it cost to acquire new customers? And are there particular types or styles of customers or segments of your customer base that you're seeing that are actually, lower cost to acquire because it's just easier to get to them, or it's faster to get to them, or it doesn't require as much budget to get to them? And of course, things like gross margin of a project or of a campaign or overall in your activity. So e-consultancy, just as an example here, I've given those as the top three, but it's about you and your situation. So think about how you are going to begin to get a relationship, if you like, with the data, with the kind of beginnings of interpreting kind of what's actually going on. But a lot of the time here, this is all really about, my top tip would be, whilst you can track and analyze billions of combinations of marketing metrics, the essential value you add as a marketer is to really reduce this down to maybe 5 or 6 key things that provide the highest priority information back into the business. Now, you'll get a sense when you start to look at all of the data feeds, all of the information feeds from, surveys to polls, to some of the analytics that you're looking at here, you will know that there are a number here that you are just feeling drawn to because they provide you with a sense of evidence. They provide you with the graphs that allow you to tell some stories. And so you will be just intuitively or maybe practically and logically drawn to some of these things. Now, a lot of the time, the 5 or 6 that you choose as your highest priority might not be the ones that you're going to still be living with this time next year. And that's fine, to at least make a decision that I'm going to begin with these. It might even be 3 or 4 just to kind of, get your feet under the table and just to get started. And again, that's fine. You know, these are not absolute numbers. These are not absolute examples. You need to kind of get a sense of what works for you. And that's really, really important. But whilst you can track, you know, literally billions of combinations of data, it's about just getting a sense of, if I could only know a certain number of things, and if I could only see a feed of this particular kind of data so I can get a sense of what's going on, what would those things be? So it's about sitting with the data. It's about playing with the data and getting a real kind of sense of what's important. And where are you going to be able to start this analysis? Well, it probably is going to be in the areas and the tools and the processes within your organization that give you the opportunity to spot trends. In other words, look at graphs, look at a flow of activity, look at difference between a point in time and another point in time. Look at a difference between version A and version B. So split testing, that kind of thing. So we're going to see this come out to play in things like Google Analytics, Tableau, nice sort of dashboard service there, and things if you are Microsoft Power BI user, you know, from a visual perspective, what can you spot? What are you feeling drawn to? This is analysis, okay? It's not just about the data. It's about you getting a sense of there's something in this. This thing is telling me a story. I can see the graph is moving. I can see these numbers are now trending. What is going on? So you're not actually drawing conclusions from this stuff. You're just at the analysis stage and getting, you know, up close and personal with the metrics and up close and personal with the data. And for a lot of us, this is kind of added value stuff because we might never have been here before, or we've kind of tiptoed around the edges of this. But now is the time to get intimate with your metrics. That's really what I'm saying here. Because then we can move to the next stage, which is the what and why of insights. So again, we'll do a little bit of a definition, but we'll also then think a bit at this stage about this significance in strategic decision making. Because ultimately you could be at this point saying, well, why bother, Neil? You know, everything's going fine. We're kind of happy with how the business is performing. So why do I need to know this? Well, drawing insights from anything that's trending allows you to mend that, and I can't remember whoever came up with this first, but it just says it all for me. It's like mend the hole in the roof whilst the sun is shining. The last thing you want to be doing is mending the hole in the roof when it's pouring with rain. Okay, so when anything is going well, when anything is looking good and everything feels like it's nice and steady, it's at that moment you need to get deep into the insights, because you could be then setting yourself up beautifully for when things get tougher, because as we know, everything goes in cycles. So do it now. There's no excuse to not do this right here, right now. So we've got our metrics, we've got our sort of raw data, and we're starting to get a sense through analysis of this stuff's trying to tell me something. What is it trying to tell me? So let's think then about the insights. So your role at this third of the fourth stage, this third step of 4, in the insight stage, is to start to draw some conclusions from the analysis. So you're looking at the graph that's being fed by this reliable data around this key performance indicator that you're tracking, because you know it's going to tell you something at some point. So your role now at this insight stage is to start to step up to the plate and make a conclusion, make a judgment, draw a recommendation out of this particular analysis and think, okay, based on what I can see, and look, I've got a good period of time, I'm monitoring this over a month, I can see that every day something has shifted here. We're seeing something here that, hey, if we respond to this and do something as a result of this, we could get a little bit of competitive advantage. Or look, this thing is going down. We need to shift our focus. It might be within a campaign to a new channel, or it could be that, look, we're doing all this spend here, but look, this thing over here is happening even more effectively. We need to divert or even pivot. So it's those kinds of recommendations that the business is going to really value from you. So at the insight stage, it's about you really being confident, because of course you can be. This is all evidence-based. You've got the data to back it up. You've got the analysis because it just feels and looks, and you can sense that it's the right thing to be monitoring and analyzing. So now it's time to make a decision. And this is you deciding from the analysis. Don't leave this to somebody else. So if you're reporting this on behalf of maybe a marketing manager or marketing director, because they need to report it up higher in the organization, fine, but you need to draw some conclusions and recommendations. Accountability, if you are gathering data, is towards you. So, take the opportunity here. This is a great opportunity to make that added value sort of thing for the organization. So you decide from the analysis that you're doing a number, not too many, but just a number of conclusions and recommendations, and share those into the organization. I've got a nice little sort of summary for you. Actually, you can follow this if you go to hevodata.com, HEVO data.com /learn/types of marketing analytics. They've got 3 very, very nice descriptions and definitions of the 3 levels of insights that you can share. And I'm going to go into these just briefly now, but if you want to do this a little bit deeper, because this is one of the key, I think, probably for most of us, kind of missing elements in this whole mix of metrics and analytics, insights and evaluation. This is often the bit that we miss, is kind of that move between the key performance indicators and actually, solid recommendations, so people outside of ourselves can make some good business decisions, low risk, high value, based on evidence. So it's really important to get to the understanding of the 3 different types of insights. So some can be descriptive, some can be predictive, or some can be prescriptive. And I'll talk about what each one of those are. But if you go to hevodata.com, you can look at this in a lot more detail at your leisure. Okay, so the descriptive type. Okay, so I'll just go through the definition of this because it will give you a sense of, are these the kind of insights, the recommendations, the conclusions that my business would value? So a descriptive insight is, with historical data, decision makers can have an overview of the company's performance and benchmarks used for progress. As a result, they can understand the current performance and implement a new business strategy by using the data from the past. So the descriptive is kind of saying, look, based on this, based on these trends, based on these key performance indicators, I recommend X, Y, and Z. Okay, so that's kind of the descriptive type of insight. And you could, if that resonates, because culturally that's how your business is set up, that could be really, really great value. Predictive insights, predictive analytics is often carried out after descriptive analytics, as it helps in understanding what could be the future outcome. So predictive, yeah, clue is in the word. As a result, predictive analytics is used in business to improve operational efficiencies and reduce risks. Okay, so if your organization or your team or your line manager is kind of quite risk averse, then predictive insights could be very, very powerful for you, because they're giving you a sense of, this is very, very, on balance, very, very likely to be what's going to happen next, or what is going to happen in the future. And because it's evidence-based, you should and could be quite confident in making a recommendation based on, the past activity as to what is going to happen in the future. And of course, this could be to operate more efficiently. So it could be to do campaigns, in a more targeted way, or to only use this particular channel for your next sort of project. Maybe it's about, streamlining the number of target personas that you go for, or whatever it happens to be operationally, because you've now got the evidence that gives you the analytics, which gives you the insights to then focus and prioritize. So that would be a more effective, more streamlined future outcome based on evidence, for example. So that could be a really useful thing. Now, for a lot of organizations, particularly in these kind of turbulent and sort of unpredictable times, reduction of risk, in whatever sense you define risk, is also really, really important. So predictive analytics and predictive insights can come into play really strongly here. So if you can give extra value to say, look, we've always just done it on a bit of a wing and a wish. We've gone into this market, or we've developed this product because it's innovative, and we just kind of get a sense of, let's just go for it. That is not solid risk-averse planning. But predictive analysis and predictive insights, where you're kind of using the data to predict what's going to happen, can enable you to make decisions that are going to be, particularly if you're going for investment, either new budget or you're looking for new shareholders, it can reduce the risk. It can take off that uncertainty. And, as a line manager, if you're getting this from your staff, so that you can make less risky decisions, well, what is not to like? So there's a lot of real value here from a commercial perspective, as well as just purely marketing. And the final insights are the prescriptive ones. And this is defined by Hevo Data as prescriptive analytics is used to make the best and most optimized decisions for the future of the business. It answers questions like, what should you do next if certain things happen in the future? So this brings in the whole kind of strategic planning concept of scenario planning. If you haven't looked that up and you're not sure what I mean when I say scenario planning, do a search for this outside of this session and just have a little look there, because what you can do is you can ask the question in your next team meeting or in the next planning session based on prescriptive insights, which give you a sense of, okay, this is very likely to happen. And if this does happen, we want to know what to do next. So then you can scenario play. So you can say, look, if the competition responds to our product launch that we're just about to do in this particular way, based on this evidence and this data, the market's going to move that way. So what can we do? And so you can have some very, very interesting kind of discussions about your options. But then from those options, based on the insights and the analysis and the metrics that you've been monitoring, you can make some solid evidence-based decisions. So to me, if I was there listening and watching how your business is doing stuff, how your business is operating, how your business is planning for the future, prescriptive insights could be super powerful to take away the risk, to make sure you've covered all bases as to what possibly might happen next, and of course, allow you to then prioritize really effectively. And that's a very, very powerful way, not just to answer what today's challenges are, but also to move you sort of really assuredly into the future. So from the insight side of things, my top tip would be that it is your role, and I'll emphasize your role as a marketer, whatever your title or seniority, to help your business turn the information captured and tracked into intelligence that the wider business, probably not just marketing, can use to inform more effective decision-making. That is your role as a marketer. So it doesn't matter what kind of job title you have, what kind of seniority you are, this is your role as marketer. If we as marketers do more of this, and I'm looking in the mirror here too, I'm not telling you to do something that I'm not tasking myself with. I need to do this for my clients too. A lot more is to really, really start to turn the information into intelligence that the businesses I work with, and yours too, can use to inform more effective decision-making, lower risk, evidence-based, planned around contingencies, planned around really solid forecasting. This is what we should be doing. This is why we're here discussing this topic here today. It's really, really important that we really start to do this stuff. And then the why, the what and the why of the evaluation. Well, obviously we need to define again what we mean by evaluation, but looking at this as iterative improvement. So those little marginal gains, I often talk about, evolution, not revolution. So making marginal gains, 1% improvement here, 1% improvement there, so that constantly we're improving every single thing that we do. And this is the evaluation, looking back at those insights, looking back at those planning meetings and saying, we made those decisions back then. Now what has happened? Actually, where are we now off the basis of making those decisions? Because if we can understand where we were, the data that we captured, the analysis that we did, the insights that we gathered, so the recommendations and conclusions for changing stuff, and now we can actually look and see the impact of then actually what happened. So assessing the impact and decisions taken from those insights, then what a great strong position we'll be in. Because if we were then to repeat this, remember this circle of activity that we're doing, continually repeating what it is we're doing, well, again, this is continuous improvement. And I've used that phrase a couple of times already. So important. So smallbusiness.cron.com have come up with this lovely quote for just really this importance of iterative improvement. So they define this as, and I'll just read this through to you, continuous improvement in marketing helps you achieve a better return on investment in your marketing. Continuous improvement is a form of quality management that focuses on making small incremental improvements to a process rather than trying to achieve major changes. In marketing, you can use continuous improvement to achieve goals, such as increasing the accuracy of targeting, improving product or service quality, increasing customer satisfaction, or providing higher quality leads to the sales force. smallbusiness.cron.com. It's just really part and parcel. The evaluation of all of this is part and parcel of continuous improvement in your marketing. So again, no matter what kind of role you have, what kind of inputs you're giving to the organization, this can be something that gives you a superpower. It really does. And I said right at the start, this is mining gold, because it really is. Everything we're talking about here is evidence-based. So if you can go back and review the decisions that were taken and look and see the impact that those decisions had on the improvements, hopefully, but even if it isn't improvements, it could be, look, yeah, we made that decision, we got that wrong. Then you're going round through this loop again, gathering the data to see why, feeling why, looking at the trends again, coming through with some recommendations and seeing if you can improve off a lower baseline. So no matter what the outcome, evaluation is really there as your friend at this fourth stage. So my top tip, though, here is about being very mindful about the style of the organization and really what's going on, because evaluation needs to bear in mind the business culture. So you need to know the business culture, the orientation of your organization, the strategic and tactical goals that you have, so you can continuously fine-tune your evaluation in such a way that it inspires, that it guides and it leads business development in the broadest sense, not just sales, but development of the business. Because in this way, marketing will provide ever-improving value to every level of your business. So why would we want to be involved in all this stuff? Well, this is it. This is the million-dollar answer, really. So let me just unpick some of these bits for a moment. Knowing your business culture, evaluation of the insights and the analytics that you've done, and then playing it back in the style of your business is key. Because if you just, and I've said this a couple of times in different ways, but it's so crucial to getting this right. If you just report it back in a marketing style or a marketing sense, forgetting the culture of your business, then it's not going to land. It's not going to be understood. It's not even necessarily going to be heard. So if your culture of your business is very risk averse, then you know the style of reporting of your insights and your analytics and your metrics that you need to be capturing. So knowing the business culture is key to understanding the little nuances of how you're going to share that back to the business. Also knowing the orientation. If you're a very sales-driven oriented organization or commercial company, then knowing that allows you then to align the metrics, the analysis, the insights, and how you present the evaluation back in such a way that it reports it back in a sense of supporting sales. If you're product-driven or market-driven, obviously it would be a slightly different spin. Knowing as well the strategic and tactical goals. I mean, if you've listened to any of my stuff in the past, you will know that I'm just obsessed with kind of playing stuff back to higher level goals, because otherwise, why are we here? Why are we bothering? So making sure that everything you report and everything you evaluate does report back to something that's more meaningful at a higher level. Because of course, then if you're continually fine tuning it, it will inspire, because people will look at this and think, wow, gosh, this person has really got why we're here and what we're trying to do. And look how they're supporting us with this. It can also help to be guiding the future, because you're guiding it on the basis of solid foundational data. Clearly, that's going to be good. And then in time, if you continually repeat this best practice, and this is really what this is, then you can start to lead the development of the business, because you'll be called into those senior management meetings to give your view on something. And I've seen this play out this year with a number of people where they've just done some really great work that has amazed the organization. And they're now being asked to contribute to places and projects and thought leadership and strategic planning. in ways that they would never have done before. So this can be really good at a personal level for your career development. You will be treated with a lot more authority, credibility, and responsibility, and given more accountability for stuff just by following these kind of simple top tips, really. And of course, if you decide, if you commit to do this on an ongoing basis, it will provide ever improving value to every level of the business, because it just will. This is continuous improvement of your ways of reporting, of the data that you're capturing, the ways that you spot stuff, because you'll get super, super habitual at actually being able to spot these great trends and these opportunities, and then make those recommendations in your insights. So it can, if you commit to this, only get better and better. So there's some really, really powerful stuff in here. And I can only say to you really that if you follow it in these 4 steps and continuously, sort of re-improve from the evaluations that you do, and then drive the right kind of metrics in through this process, it will just get better and better and better and more effective. So collect the metrics, figure out what it is from those metrics that are going to be really, really important. Do the analysis. That's really, really key. So just feel the data, sit with the data, watch the data, monitor the data and those key performance indicators. Share the insights. And I've just talked to you about how to do that kind of stuff in a way that's appropriate for the organization, and then drive the evaluation. Don't just leave it there. Don't just say, yeah, I just report the monthly dashboard and then I get on with my job. See this thing through. This is a big opportunity to punch above the job title that you have right now, if you choose to. It's not for everybody, but those who do, I've seen so many examples of those who really get on in their career. So this is a big opportunity. So those are the 4 stages: collect, do, share, and drive. Those are the verbs that you need to do. So it is a proactive activity. And I've had a really interesting question actually come through on the Q&A. Add to this or in the chat if there's anything that you're interested to explore a little bit further here. But someone comes up with the question: any advice for how to change internal stakeholders to actually care about the stats and insights that show true impact and performance for your team when, and I love this, when all they want to see are vanity metrics and big numbers? Oh, something you would not know. You would not believe how many times I've gone round that loop. Sometimes it's really not possible. I'll give you the honest answer here. And this comes back to the question about the company culture. Sometimes the company or the business is just so entrenched in kind of old school vanity metrics that they are probably never going to really learn from you. But if you do this in such a way that it from your perspective, it just allows you to kind of drive the narrative. And so you know that you're doing this in a high quality way, so that you know on your portfolio stroke CV that you've got some really great tangible examples of where you instigated change. You could argue, does it really matter that a lot of the internal stakeholders don't actually care or know about how you do it? If you're just driving the sense of positive change, if you're driving continuous improvement, despite these people who really don't get it because they'll never get it, could you, whatever role you have and whatever sort of level of seniority you have, if you know you're doing the right thing, here's a question for you: could you do it despite them? I think ultimately it is about trying to train them, though. That's kind of almost the worst case on the spectrum. The middle case is that, they don't know what they don't know yet. So it probably is about over time, and you're not going to be able to change this overnight. I love this question, by the way, so thank you for raising it. But it probably is that over time you could inspire them, you could educate them. I'm working with a client at the moment who, in every monthly meeting, we're trying to add in one new feature to the report that we have, so that over time they start to understand where the analysis is coming from. They have no clue because they've never been here before, so we can't really expect them outside of marketing to really understand, well, what is it? What does that word mean? Because they've never seen it before. We don't necessarily know how they do their job at this level. So why would we expect them to really understand it? So we're kind of, as part of these monthly meetings, drip feeding in one new feature into the report each month. And so we're kind of doing this long burn, slow burn kind of education piece. Hopefully it may improve things as we go forward, but even if it doesn't, the reporting and the evaluation and the insights that we're kind of talking about here are still improving, and we know they're improving a month-on-month basis. So maybe have a go with kind of thinking about it more as an educational piece. And then obviously the high end of the spectrum is where everybody totally gets it, because it's a very data-driven, evidence-based organization. There aren't very many of those. So if you're sitting there listening to this thinking, well, actually, yeah, we've already kind of got to that because everybody knows it and we live and breathe it, then you're in a very fortunate place. But it's still an opportunity to do this continuous improvement. So you'll be somewhere on the spectrum. There is the no hope organization where you can just do it because you know it's the right thing to do. The middle ground on the spectrum is we've got to teach them how to get value and really understand what we're talking about, through to the high end, very data centric, and they're using big data in every decision. So you'll be somewhere on that, you'll be somewhere on that spectrum. But I do really appreciate that question, because I think for lots of us, that's the reality in which we live. So it is a big challenge. This stuff is not easy. That is the key thing. But if you follow these 4 steps and be very, very clear when you're talking to people about the difference between metrics, analysis, insights, and evaluation, then hopefully you'll be taking the few sort of next very, very positive steps to taking control over how you report and understand marketing improvement.